Hey guys out there in Hollow Point land, it's February and it's freezing. -6 degrees here in northwest Indiana. Ugh. So that's one of the main reasons you have not seen me doing outdoor videos, is it's just too darn cold. I've dealt with the snow before, I've shot in the ice, you've seen me in my previous videos, but if there's 24 or 40 inches of snow on the ground, I can't drive back to the property to do some shooting. So what I'm going to try during the next month or so is do smaller condensed videos just covering like one specific topic. And today we're going to discuss the compressor that I use, the booster pump, tanks, and fittings. So there won't be any shooting, but hopefully I can cover some points that are headaches and try to explain some of that. Now, I've been super busy casting, pure awesome. Right now I'm burning through about 1,000 pounds of lead a month. I've actually did something to my wrist here that I can barely lift the mold, so I got to get a brace to wrap that baby up. So with that said, we're going to get started. But I want to give you a big shout out and a thank you to today's volunteer sponsor, the Honolulu, Hawaii Police Department. Officer Walls, thank you very much. Sent me this fine t-shirt and hat. Hawaii is one of my favorite places to hunt. They've got massive amounts of the tastiest animals on the islands. I'm telling everyone, if you can get a chance to go there, go there. Not only will you have a wonderful vacation, you're going to put on about 40 pounds stuffing yourself with access deer and the best tasting Hawaiian pork in the world. And on top of that, the nicest people to ever arrest me was the Honolulu Police Department. I say thank you. I take my hat off, but you'd see my bald head. So let's get to it, baby. Honolulu, you rule! All right, fellas, when I got into air gunning back in the early 2000s, they didn't have the little tiny compressors that you have now. Even the booster pump wasn't available. It wasn't invented. So living in Chicago, when I started this, I had no choice but to buy an industrial compressor. This is a Bauer, probably one of the best large industrial companies in the world, in my opinion. At the time, I think this was about $3,800. This was originally a 4,500 PSI. You see I got my little setup here because I run mine in the basement. I did not want a gas compressor because that would have limited me to being out in the garage, and to me that's just impractical. So I opted for the electrical. This has a big old monster motor here. I don't even know what size motor this is, to be honest. I'm not an electrician. Phase 1 type B, HP-3, maybe it's a 3 horsepower. But what I liked about this is it doesn't come wired. You can run this as a regular 110, or you run it as a 220. And it's 220, of course it's going to go faster. It's going to increase your fill time. So I had the electrician at the building wire it for 220. I got my on-off switch here. It's just something basic. That, you know, I pick all these extra parts. I just picked those up at the hardware store. It had a regular 4 twist lock that I put on for if I was running it off the generator, because that was my original idea, was running off the generator when I'm up north, or at my place of business. I have a lot of 4 twist lock 220 equipment, inserters and things like that in the printing business. So I had to make me a little cheater here so I can plug this in for like a 220 air conditioner. Okay, that's why I have this knob of stuff here. It's a little different. But this is, it's got the cooling fan. It's three piston, well, you can't see it here, I'll have to move the camera, but it's a 3 piston, 3 cylinders. And the way these work is it stacks the air from one piston to another to another. I've got this is the pressure relief valve here, so when it hits, you know, certain PSI, it pops up, so the air just bleeds out. It doesn't keep filling the tank, so you don't burst your tank or blow your equipment up. It's oil. It's got an oil reservoir here for keeping it lubricated. And let me try to roll this around this way. Yeah, if you can see it. It has 2 bleeder hoses here. One bleeds the moisture, and the other lets the excess air that's in the compressor, you bleed it off when you're done with everything. Okay, so we will continue. I'll try to get some close-ups here. Now, I always change a few things around. This had a smaller 3-inch gauge, and I put a big 4-inch gauge on there. But it doesn't, the gauge is slightly off, you know, so when I'm filling my tanks, I have to figure out which one is actually more closer. This is the open and close valve. It comes with this big old 6,000 PSI beefy purple line. Now, because these are scuba compressors, it comes with this weird, you know, scuba piece here that's supposed to go over your scuba tank. I don't do scuba. So I had to buy this little adapter, which is just a block with an O-ring and a hole and a male fill nipple coming out. Okay, that's extra. Now, granted, you know, this little thing here is like $95 on the company website, but you can pretty much pick one up off of eBay for $25. You just have to make sure, as always, all your pieces are rated for 5,000 PSI and above. So that's the hose. This thing is pretty loud. Let's see if I can get down over here. This has got some information on the side. And then I said, these are your 2 bleeders. This is there's a filter in here. It's a filter / moisture trap. And the problem is with most compressors is, especially the cheap ones, people don't spend the extra couple $100 for a quality moisture trap. And so you wind up pumping excess moisture into your tank, which then eventually gets into your rifle. So let me show you a little bit how the electric works on this. So I discovered in this house, I don't have a spare 220 line. So what I found on the internet was this is called the Quick 220. It's got a breaker, or, you know, a little popper there, for, like, you know, air conditioner plug. And what this allows me to do is it has 2 lines coming out of it, and you can see it's a non-standard weirdo, so you can't plug it in. And it comes with a short normal adapter. So the idea is you run 2 extension cords, one to each one from two different power outlets, which would be 2 different breakers, and it combines it here and gives you a solid 220. And it won't run without, if anything's messed up or goofy, it won't run. It won't, you know, it's got a sensors and everything inside, and the little light comes on and it tells you that you're good to go. So I have one line running this way and one line running that way up through the rafters here in the basement, and that gives me my 220 hookup. Versus having to try to rewire a whole thing and have a 220. It was just a super easy way for me to deal with this. So I'll plug it in and kind of show you what it does. Okay, so I've got my tank hooked up with the quick connect. I've closed this bleeder, made sure this bleeder's locked down, and I like to close that. Then the first thing I do is I'll open this up. Alright, so now the gauges are both reading about 3,900 psi. Flip this on, and then I'll open this. So now both hoses are open, both valves, and it's pumping air in. Okay. Now I'm going to shut it off as if it's already filled. Bring this back a little further. Okay. So just pretend I ran this for 20 minutes. I'm up to my temperature. So I close the line so the air that comes through can't go any further. I close the tank, and then I'll open the bleeder here. Now, bingo, we're disconnected. Then the other thing, when I'm done running my whole setup, is you got to bleed the air that's in the lines when you're done, so you don't always have pressure sitting in there. And you can hear that little popping. That's a little bit of moisture that was collected. And that's a lot of air that is built up in the system. Okay, finish those. I unhook my line. And again, everybody's different. This just happens to be the setup I'm using. I'll disconnect my two different sources of electricity. And then, of course, because this is so heavy, I have it on a dolly so I can wheel it around. And push it off in the corner so it's never in the way of getting hit by bullets. Now, this part of the video is my adapter selection. Okay, it's a little angled thing I made up for if you're shooting with a suppressor on your rifle and the shoulder's in the way. This is a male to male. This wasn't. So when I got into this, a lot of this stuff just wasn't invented. Now you can go on Amazon or eBay and get a male to male, you know, adapter setup for $7. You know, none of this was available back in like 2004, 2005. This is the extender that you need for some of the air rifles that where the nipple is deep in. Donnie FL carries these on his webpage, but they're really essential, because what's happening in the paintball world is all this stuff is, I don't know why, coming out of China, but these little spots, these are like now 8mm, okay, And you go and you order something offline, or you get it, and your previous female won't fit. It's like it's too darn big. So either you got to chuck this up in a drill and put a file on it, or you need some different adapters to put on. Several of my tanks, things don't all line up, and I'm not about to spend $89 on a whip female male to setup to constantly switch things around. So I just have a bunch of these different pieces, so if something doesn't fit, I grab something else. It's just part of your tackle box assortment when you start getting into, you know, tons and tons of stuff like I do. So what I'm trying to share with you is, okay, this is your standard scba tank, not scuba tank, scba, okay? It's an 88 cubic feet, 60 minutes breathing tank. So if you're looking on eBay, 88 cubic feet or 60 minutes equal the same thing. It's the one the firemen use. The 45-minute breathing tank is 66 cubic feet. It's a little bit shorter, just to give you an idea. And then you have the 30-minute tank, and I don't know what the cubic foots are. Feet. But this is the 30-minute tank. Maybe it's I don't know what it is cubic foot wise. Maybe if you just figure out a quick math equation. But you can see the size difference in the two. Okay. And then you have your little buddy bottle, you know, that's like half this size that the paintball world always uses. Okay. So the scba fitting is what this outer thread pattern is. Okay. So you can go online. They've got a couple of guys that sell some top quality made in the USA. I refer to this as the fill assembly. That's this piece right here, the big knuckle that screws on the threaded shaft. You've got yourself a 3-way or a 4-way connector, bleeder, gauge, hose with the female quick connect. This is what I refer to as your fill assembly. Okay? Because without a bleeder, you won't get this off your rifle. You know, you've got 4,500 PSI in this line and it's connected. You're not going to slip that thing off. And if you did, you're probably going to get injured. Now, you've seen my other tanks. I don't have that on there. Okay, this is, I did this myself, just got the parts off of eBay and Amazon. This is just the knuckle that goes on the scba with the shaft, and then I've just got a 1/4 inch reducer to 1/8 reducer to put the quick connect on. This way, when I'm running my booster pump, I don't need the extra gauges and bleeders because I can bleed it through the booster and disconnect it. So like this, when I'm traveling, I just need a hose with the male to female quick disconnect. It's less stuff hanging and all in the back of the car and bouncing around. A lot of the tanks you see are like this now. They'll have, you know, the hose is separate, so it can be put away or it's not going to get damaged or dragging in the mud. Again, scba, not scuba, not DIN. That's what I'm using. And if you're filling your own tanks, you can find these on eBay with some life still left on them, you know, and save yourself a few dollars. But as I tell everyone, when you're starting out, get yourself a top dollar tank that's got 14 years of life on it, okay, versus buying used stuff that's got a short expiration date. Because just like propane tanks, they need to be hydroed. If you take them any place, scuba shop or paintball, they go by the hydro date on the tank. So that's a whole nother topic. So let's look at some more fittings. So here's what I'm going to try to show with the booster pump a little more slowly in detail. So again, you can see this tank has no fill assembly on it. It's just got, or the gauge and the bleeder valve. So the air just goes through the line, okay? It fills, this shaft gets filled with air. I've got a splitter right here. So because this air is coming out at 4,500 psi. So it comes out through the splitter, goes through a reducing regulator. That's a reducing regulator, drops it down to 125 psi, and goes through my flipper valve. Okay, instead of the push button, you know, I got the flipper. I like this better. All right, and then what happens is the air that comes through here, this is just a big empty cylinder with a flat O-ring and washer on it. So as I pull this down, the air starts to fill and push this piston forwards. In here is a shaft with some type of plunger on it, and the air that's in here, as it gets pushed forward, goes up through this valve set up here. This is an open and close valve around into the rifle. And the reason the air can't go backwards is there's one-way check valves that prevents the air. So what you're actually doing is you're just filling this with air, however many cc's of air that is, and you're squeezing that into the rifle. So each time you push the stroke lever up, this goes forwards, squeezes that into the rifle. So that's how it doesn't make a difference what's in this big tank. Because this is just a source feed tank. What you're doing is you're filling this and then squeezing this into your air tank of the air rifle itself. That's why this is a booster pump. It's not a compressor. Okay. Now mine looks a little different because I'm always changing doodads. When I shoot, you know, I don't disconnect the rifle when I'm testing. So I'll open this, and also, because the air in this tank is just a full bypass. So if you've got 4,500 in here and you're only filling the rifle to 3,000, you're not even going to be actuating the booster. You're just going to open this, and when this gauge hits 3,000, you'll close it and shoot. So that's, I don't even use the booster until I'm below my fill pressure. So this Taurus by Brian at Veradium Air, this 357 shoots around 3,600 psi. So I just keep opening this until that gauge hits 36 and close it. Now once I'll open this and it's down to about 34, then I'll move the booster handle, and it'll stroke and just push this certain amount of air into the rifle, and then when I hit it, I stop, I close it, and then I shoot, and then that's when I actually start using the booster. Now the sad thing is as this chamber here fills with air, when you let the handle down, the pressure from the tank pushes the cylinder, and it pushes the cylinder back to the zero position, so all the air that's in there comes back up and goes out this vent. So all this air is getting wasted. It's just going back out. That's why a lot of times, instead of this setup here, you've got a regular shop compressor chuck sticking out. So you're using shop compressor to fill it up and shoot it each time. I can't do that. I'm always a standalone setup. So to shoot, so what I like to do is I like having two tanks connected together. So what I did is I made another little quick connect. It goes on, and then I can hook another source tank there, and then now I've got two tanks opened and running through, so I can sit and shoot a lot longer than having just one tank set up. You know, two tanks daisy chained together lets you spend a lot more time, you know, at the range, having the fun that you want to do, especially when you're doing a lot of testing like I do. I'll go through 8-hour session. I'll go through 4 to 6 tanks in an 8-hour session of shooting. So again, I made this little piece here. I like it. The other thing, the reason I have this additional setup is normally you got to close your tanks, then bleed the line, you know, hit the bleeder and disconnect everything. So all this is full of air. All this is getting just wasted. With this, I can just open and close right here, bleed it, and just disconnect the rifle if that's what I so choose to do. Instead of having to, especially if you have 2 tanks, you had to close this one and close this one, then come over here and bleed the line. It's just a lot of headache for me. So any type of booster pump, no matter who you buy from, the add-on changing parts around is really simple. It's just knowing what's a 1/4 inch, what's a 1/8, and having some pipe tape and making sure that all your fittings are rated for 5,000 PSI. So that's the 2 tank setup on how I do that. Okay. So, gentlemen, I am not a tank fittings professional aficionado. You know, you have to work within your budget, and that's why you see I've got all sorts of crazy stuff here, because, you know, it gets very expensive very quickly. You know, so I have to work in my budget. This actually is the Bauer gauge. They came on the compressor. Bauer's not a paid sponsor. I don't have paid sponsors. I just, at the time, like I said, 2004, there was only 2 companies that had industrial compressors, what I call industrial, you know, for paintball and scuba. And I like this company versus the other company that was gasoline powered. I just thought it was better service, just, you know, because I have to have an idiot-proof setup. I can't have something that needs to be built and monitored and checked. The only thing I have to make sure is the oil's always up to date. You change the oil periodically, but I don't run mine like most guys do. I've got, even though I've had this since 2005, 4, it's got very low miles on it, or hours. So I change the filter periodically. I always vent it when I'm done, just try to keep it good. If you buy these low-end compressors, which are great that they're available, take the time and spend the money. You know, if you guys spend $200-300, do it, and get your moisture and filter traps to, you know, get all that out. So the only thing you're putting in your tank is clean, dry air. All right, because the moisture is what will rust up and mess your gun up from the inside out. I said I told you about the different fittings. Sometimes I really try to make sure I read every detail when I order some. I need some more fittings, so I'll order a dozen or something. And sometimes I still wind up with the wrong stuff. Now that things are coming out metric, it's kind of creating a headache. It's just do the best you can with what you can find. What else? Again, I think I've covered as much as I can. I don't use scuba tanks because they only do 3,000 PSI. Most guns today, you know, need more than that. So, but if you do have scuba tanks, you need it, and you get yourself one of these high-end guns, air rifles like the Hammer or the Pile Driver that needs 43 or 4,500, or the Extreme Big Bore 4,500. You need a booster pump. You can sit with 2,000-3,000 PSI scuba tanks and boost to 4,500 a bunch of times. I don't know exactly how much, but you can do it a bunch of times and still hit your high peak pressure. I am not shooting tethered, even though my line is connected. Tethered means you have a regulator that takes a high pressure, reduces it to a lower pressure, and that's your constant output. I don't shoot like that. If you look at all my videos, I close the valve, shoot the gun, then I open the valve. I never disconnect. and I don't shoot with the valve open. I always close it for safety. So I'm shooting, even though I'm connected, I'm not shooting technically tethered. Because tethered, again, you have a 6,000 PSI tank, you get a, $500 regulator that outputs 3,000 or 4,000 PSI. So each shot is a continuous full pressure shot. I'm not doing that. I like being the average Joe. Everything I do, you should be able to duplicate. So with that, if you have any questions, shoot me an email, give me a call. But please don't be text messaging me. Some of you guys, I love you to death, but you call me, you leave me a voicemail, then you text me on the phone, then you send me a text through Facebook. It's the same person in 5 different ways on the same question. Ay Dios mío, you're driving me crazy. Okay? I like email the best because I can respond at my leisure. I don't like having to type on the phone. Okay? I'm not Mr. Thumb Guy. So I like emails are best. But with big technical questions, a phone call is always best. If you do call, leave a message, leave me a phone number. Sometimes the phone doesn't, I don't even know that you called, and I'm checking messages, and it's like, oh, Donnie Walls called from Honolulu. I didn't even see, it's not even on the phone, but there's a message, but it doesn't show. So always double check, that way for safety. So with that being said, I think I've covered the pumps, the tanks, in the booster, in the fittings. I think I've covered everything I could think of. I don't do the little compressors, so I can't really talk about those. So thank you, Hawaii. Thank you, Honolulu Police Department. And I'm telling you, I really appreciate, when you guys gave me the full cavity search, you used fresh gloves. And that's from the heart. Thank you very much. Aloha, mahalo. I love you guys. And if anybody on the islands wants to adopt me and move me in, me and Mrs. Hollow Point will pack our gear and we'll go to the islands.